This is the day after holiday. Oh my gosh. We had so much cake in our house. I'm like, I feel like I was going
Highly bland. I guess you talk about on the north side.
Their chicken sandwich is good. You never know what you're going to do with them. You go through the well, it's supposed to be. You never know. You can order a sandwich. Pretty fast, you may get the sandwich. No french fries, you may not get the sandwich. It's a slot.
Give me some fried milk. For some reason, I thought
over here.
Which one? This is
I will
you don't get it. No. If I didn't take it very well, I wouldn't have been ready. Yeah.
I never get it. So I said, It does, it takes all three of everything. I've had my opportunities to leave my Washington.
I had this guy that worked for us, and I'm hoping that he started out. And I told him, I got the account was over something. I said,
I'm always gonna be needed.
everybody, that's why I told the top, so I said, that's probably occasionally he needs to go in all the time. Washington State.
Well, I lived in Washington State for years.
I don't know where in Washington. University up there. That's all I know about it.
I know somebody who does. That's how I got to do to speak. He's your man. Volunteering. Did he? He's not. I have
He had his big security. And the British every joke he had and he had a motivation. This was like
Oh, he did, oh, he did.
Okay, Art should be able to do his
Okay, so he's doing
introduction.
something.
Okay, long view between 2 and 25, okay?
Well, you didn't feel like
I speak to your, wow.
Man, if you give me 2 minutes, I'll announce and see if there's somebody that might be willing to do their business.
Okay.
I've tried all since last year to try to see, but everybody's canceled or not able to because of COVID. But maybe it's changed a little bit, so I'll announce it. If not, we'll say we'll have a backup plan for it.
Yeah. I mean, I just thought it would be nice just to have a casual get together.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so, and Beth suggested Taco Tuesday out there. And I was like, why not?
Yeah, no foul there. Pretty easy. They open at 4, 3 o'clock. So I'll have to reach out to them later this afternoon. Work on this.
Sounds great.
All right.
Thank you. So, sorry. Dawn's going to lead us in our invocation.
Dear Jesus, thank you so much for this opportunity to come together and share a meal and connect with community leaders on how we can better serve our community, where we have been called by you. Lord, we thank you for the beautiful weather, beautiful spring, beautiful flower wedding, reminding us of the life that you still have after you resurrected that we celebrated yesterday, Lord. We ask that you bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Songs,
Worship Calvary stream, and the rockets that fire, those thirsty here, they prove the blood, and our flag goes still there. Oh, save us, that's our strength, never get away. Oh, land of the free, in the home of the brave. Thank you. Please be seated. Courtney, will you introduce our guests, please?
Yes, we're so spectacular. So we have one guest today, and she's a guest of mine, and this is mine, and she's been a development director for the Alzheimer's Alliance of Smith County, our local alliance here, and we actually read those celebrations, so we're excited to have her.
Yeah, Tom Steele, you want to give us a update where we are and who's still in it? I know
Dude, let's see. After the games the other night, UCLA got beat by Gonzaga in overtime. So Jim Eccles had UCLA, so he's in the money. And then on the other side, let's see, Houston lost to Baylor. And so Trey Patterson had Houston. So he's in the money as the third and fourth place teams. So now there's two people left. Steve Orlander has Gonzaga. And Lee Montgomery has Baylor. Bill Coates just called and he wanted us all to know that every player on the Gonzaga team is a Roman Catholic, and every player on the Baylor team is a Southern Baptist. So that game is tonight. What time is that game tonight? 8:15. So next week we'll have the number 1 and number 2 teams, and today we have the number 3 and number 4 team. So we'll hand out the money next week.
Great, thank you, Tom. Johnny Ortiz is not here today. In lieu of doing the regular member spotlight, I thought I'd focus a little bit on some member birthdays and anniversaries. We had April 2nd for Carrie Bird and John Hart. So John Hart had his baby birthday. Kimberly Ashley is April 7th. Chris McCleary, Jane Katz, and Michael Hurley are also our April birthdays. So happy birthday to you folks. We have some folks who have a decent amount of service with us. We have Lee Montgomery, who celebrates 18 years this month. Nancy Crawford, who celebrates 11 years. Marla Gorham, who's watching via YouTube, she celebrates 6 years. And Jeff Cummings is celebrating his 2nd year. So congratulations to all you folks. Anniversaries. Beth, you want to come on up and once you finish eating? While she's on her way up, a couple of things. Dalton, you want to speak about the Greater Tyler cleanup and any other things you think you want to chat about?
All right, everybody, so this coming Saturday is a Great Tyler cleanup. And I know some of you have already signed up on the sign-up sheet that's going around through email. We are going to send a physical sign-up sheet around just to kind of get an idea for today. So if you will please write your name down. Even if you have already signed up online, just go ahead and write it down and then maybe just make a note, sign up online, just so we can kind of have an idea of what we're looking at for the people in this room today. Be on the lookout, we've got some exciting things coming up. We're going to be helping with Pat. We're doing some of their housing facilities, so we're going to start having some cool things going on where we can actually kind of, do some fun stuff, work with our hands and do some stuff like that. So be on the lookout for more information about that. We do have a blood drive coming up in May, so there's still time to donate in the next week or two and be able to donate again with the club. So keep that in mind. I think that's all I've got on this summer. I'm send this summer sheet around right now.
Thanks, Dave.
Excuse me, what happens when you're shoving food in your face, you get called up? So, not a lot of groundbreaking news to share on spaghetti. We're still, we have the letter and the invoice on the website, so feel free to get those out. Someone did send me an email saying, we're still taking smaller donations, absolutely. So we have some who step up to be major sponsors, we're gonna love that, but if someone says, I would give you $100 again, then obviously we will take that. Pay with South Tyler Rotary Foundation. I am working to, maybe not today, tomorrow on setting up the Venmo accounts, so that if people want to pay electronically, they'll be able to pay through Venmo, and I'll send that information out as well. And I've gotten a lot of great response from y'all as far as the volunteers. I've been kind of putting together this puzzle piece of the committees, and that should be out in the email to you within the next couple days. So, if anyone have any questions for me?
What's your goal? What's your fundraising goal?
I would like for us to hit $60,000 this year. And I think if we can get some of those major sponsors in, as well as grant money, we can do it.
So,
All right.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, so $60,000, if you look around the room, how many of us are in here? About 40, so we all got like 10,000, 15,000 that we need to raise. So whatever you can do to help raise money, it looks a little bit different than we've done in the past, but we know you can do it. Yes, Stephen, come on up, Jeff Cummings, come on up.
this is only going to take a second, but I thought you guys would want to know.
As part of International, you may remember we did a donation to Beirut, Lebanon's Rotary Club. I got a message I thought y'all like to hear. It says, this is from the Cosmopolitan Club of Beirut, wishing you, dear fellow Rotarians and friends, wishing you a blessed and peaceful Easter, full of help and happiness. Rotary Club Beirut Cosmopolitan wishes you a blessed holiday filled with happiness, health, peace, and faith. Happy birthday, or excuse me, happy Easter, and it was under the President Habib Saba. Also, I get a weekly email from them inviting anybody here that would like to sit in on a Zoom meeting for their club. I thought I'm going to do that eventually, but I just thought y'all would want to know that they are keeping in touch with us.
Thank you.
Jeff?
So I was reached out to about doing another social event, and through the pandemic and everything, everybody kind of put their brakes on it, but we're looking at doing True Vine in the third or fourth Tuesday of this month, just to try to get something going with a food truck. But if you would like to showcase your business and would like to host instead of it be done at a True Vine, then please get with me. I'll see you after, or you can reach out to me through Club Runner or whatever else, and we'll get that connected. We did it at Chris's place down on Broadway last year. I think it was, maybe the year before. But anyways, it was a good event. We had a food truck come out, and there was, 30, 40 people that come trickling through. And so it's a good way to kind of showcase your business if that's something you're interested in. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. A couple of other quick save the dates for you folks out there. May 1st is the district training in Longview. Folks, you should consider attending that or incoming officers for the new year. We're going to have a District 50 and 30 fundraiser for polio plus Gilmore on May 22nd. More information coming out on that in the near future. David, I see you're here. Did you need to make an announcement, or are you just visiting us? I have a tendency of calling on people when their mouths are full of food.
The Kennedy Air Fest on Saturday, 3rd of July. I had a meeting with the volunteer coordinators. I will have a list of all of the responsible jobs that will be available for our County volunteer service. And we'll get them to the ASAP. We had a meeting last week, the first time. And I hope we have
Okay. Yeah, and Jim Katz is going to be our volunteer coordinator for that. Tom, were you planning on speaking? I got you in your mouthful. Anybody else want to speak? Go ahead and take a bite of food.
All right, this morning, when I told campaign contributions for the district, it appeared that we are in first place in terms of dollars contributed through the campaign. We have crossed the $3,500 plateau in today's the 5th day of the month. So congratulations to all of you. This is for the annual fund and polio plus either one, or just foundation good. This is the one-to-one match, so that in Dalton's case, Dalton figured out what it's going to take for him to complete his first Paul Harris Scholarship.
And when does that end?
It will officially end on May the 31st. But it's entirely possible that since we're having this polio fundraiser in Gilmer, it may in fact extend through at least a portion of June. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And as I mentioned at last week's meeting, when I put in the bulletin, some of you folks may ask, well, why do we ask you to donate to the Rotary Foundation? As a member of South Tower Rotary, you're also a member of Rotary International, who has 1.2 million members worldwide, nationwide, excuse me, worldwide, I said it correctly the first time. So combined, each one of us donates some towards the Rotary Foundation. Just think of the good that we can do out there. All right, any other announcements from the floor? Anything I'm missing today? Sorry, I feel a little scattered. I don't know if it's just, holiday weekend. All right, doesn't sound like I'm missing anything at this point, so I am going to turn it over to Tyler. I'm sorry, yes, Tyler.
April the 23rd, I'm leaving for a trip to Costa Rica.
Sounds fun. I hope you had a good time, Tyler. All right, seeing no more announcements from the floor, I'm going to call on Art Mullen to introduce our guests.
By way of introduction, many of you may be like me, driving down Grundy, and you see these huge power poles, and you just kind of wonder about just what's going on with those huge structures. Or maybe you come upon a power station full of insulators, surrounded by chain link, barbed wire, no vegetation. What's going on there? All kind of questions about these kinds of electric type stations. Well, I'm going to bring up here in just a minute Tom Trimble with Encore, and he's going to tell us about such things and even more. Tom is a regional manager of Encore. He is degreed 2 times from A&M. He also has 12 years of environmental consulting experience, and that in turn led to his current position with Encore. And he's also one of us in that he is incoming president of the Jacksonville Rotary. So let's welcome up Tom Trimble.
Thank you so much. Right, I do have a sheet here, so I will have some statistics, because I'm sure that none of you have really any questions for me after this last year. But first, I do want to talk to you guys about what Encore is, what we do, and what we do in the communities and things like that. So we are the electric delivery company in the state of Texas. So the state of Texas, we deregulated back in the early 2000s. And when we deregulated, it means that the generators are deregulated. They can sell power, they make it, sell it for whatever they want to sell it for. The retail electric providers on this side sell it to you, the customer. So when you buy your power, you're paying the retail electric providers. So you can go out and shop what you want. You can get the best rate possible out there in Texas. And Texas is one of the only states that does this. And so we, Encore, we're the middleman. We are basically the FedEx of the energy world. We take your package, which is electrons from the generator, and we deliver it to your house. And that's what we do. So all the wires that you see outside, those belong to Encore. We are a transmission distribution service provider. So from point A to point B, that's what we do. We deliver power to your house. So out there, when you see, and thank you for the good weather today, because it means I'm free to work and free to be here and talk. But when a storm happens and you call Encore to get your power turned back on. When you need power at your house, then what you do is you call your rep. Your rep will then call Encore and say, we need power at this address. So that's the kind of the difference in what we are versus generators and reps. Those are deregulated. We are heavily regulated though by the state of Texas. The PUC, Public Utility Commission, regulates what we do. And so it makes, our rates are set. We can't raise our rates or lower our rates without the approval of the Public Utility Commission. So when you get your bill, it'll have a little spot on your bill that says TDSP. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that is us. And that's our charges for your delivery charge, basically your shipping. So when you call Amazon and you order something and you pay for shipping, we're the shipping. So couple things that we've got out there for our customers. How many of y'all have the My Encore app? If you don't, we need to download it. So we have an app, the My Encore app, MYONCOR. So if you go to App Store or your Google Play, then you can download the My Encore app. You put in your address, you put in your account number, and it personalizes it to your house or your business. You can put, oh, there it is right there. It'll personalize it to your business or your house or whatever, and then you can get updates. You can report your outage through there. You don't have to call in and report it through the phone. You can report it on the app. You can also text in outages. Opt into a text program and text in your outage to Encore as well. You can always call. Oh, sorry. You can always call. And our outage number, which is 888-313-4747. I know it by heart. You can always call and report your outage, but these are just easier ways to report it. If you text it in or turn it in through your app, it'll give you updates on your ETOR. ETOR is ETOR, and it's estimated time of restoration. So that is what we assume it's going to take to get your power back on. And anytime that ETOR changes, it'll send you a note that'll allow you to get an update on when that ETOR is going to change. So that's out there. We also have community programs. My position, I go out, I talk to the community a lot. We have a really neat program in the company called Super Safe Kids. So if you've got kids, I've got 2 9-year-old twin daughters. And I get on our website a lot to teach them about electricity. We've got a really good at encore.com, a place where teachers can go, parents can go to teach their kids about electricity. We have videos out there, we have commercials on PBS to teach them to stay away from power lines. In storms and power line goes down, kids a lot of times don't know to stay away from those power lines. So we've got a program out there to teach all these kids to stay away from power lines. Stay away, don't climb on those transformer boxes. The green boxes in the neighborhoods that you see, those are transformers. There's power inside there that is stepping down electricity to where you can use it in your house. And so we find kids will jump on top of those and play on them, so we want them to stay away from those as much as possible. But it's a great program. If you are in your schools or you have friends that are teachers, tell them they can contact Encore and bring in our Super Safe Kids program. We did White House, all the schools there. We did Jacksonville, all the schools there. We've done the schools here in Tyler as well. But we've been able to educate over 100,000 kids on staying safe around electricity in the last few years. It's booked up all the time. Right now, we are not doing it because of the COVID restrictions. But once those are lifted and we're able to get back in the schools and talk to them, it'll be booked up as soon as we do that, because it's such a great program. Trying to think of anything else before I open it up to Q&A. Because I know you're going to have a lot of questions. So I tell you what, let's just open it up to Q&A. I'll repeat the question and then give you an answer. Yes, sir.
And this is no reflection on Encore, I want you to understand that, but there was a lot of finger pointing after the big freeze they had. But could you give us some idea, there was talking back and forth, what actually happened that caused everything to just shudder to the stop like that?
Okay, the question is what actually happened during the winter storm? To cause everything to come to a power standstill, so to speak. So the night of February 14th, so Valentine's Day, we got notice that it was going to get really cold. Going to get into single digits, possibly even negative here in the state. We started preparing days before because we knew that it was going to get bad. What happened is you got a supply. So your supply is the generation side. Your demand is the retail side. And so I'm going to have to put the mic right here because I'm going to use both my hands. I'm a hand talker. So, all right, I'll try to do this. So you get your supply and your demand. As your supply starts going down, as you lose generation in the state, so you can lose generation from all kinds of different reasons. You can, power plant can freeze up. Wind turbines can freeze. Different things can happen. This was a winter storm the likes we haven't seen in over 100 years. So as generation started falling off, ERCOT had to make a decision. What do we do? And what you have to do is you have to keep the demand below generation. As it gets close, it creates, a friction. And that's called a frequency on the grid. And that frequency needs to stay around 60. As it gets close and that frequency starts dropping, you start getting into grid stability issues. So what you're trying to do is keep that demand below the supply at all times. Once it crosses, that's when you get into a blackout type situation. So we were getting told, we've got to cut demand, In order to do that, you do what's called load shedding. And so what we do is we cut off feeders. And a feeder it's kind of like your body is the power, and a feeder might be your arm. And it goes out to all the houses out here and your businesses and stuff like that. So you've got a main line, which is like those three-phase lines, the main lines that go through town, and they spread out to all the houses. One circuit of that is called a feeder. So what we do is we cut those at the substation. And so as you're doing that, you're cutting load, which means there's not as much load on the system. So the way electricity works is as it's generated, it has to be used. There's no storage.
Right.
There are batteries, but they're not big enough to handle that much load. So it just, as it's being created, if it's not used, it just goes out to nowhere. And it's gone. But you have to use it while you're creating it because of that frequency, that balance on the grid. You've got to keep that balanced as much as possible. If you get too much generation and not enough load, that can be an issue too. And so what you want to do is you want to keep it, yes.
So since we've had trouble on the grid here, could we have transferred some power from Phoenix or from Jacksonville, Florida, or, should we have done that?
So there are ways. Texas is its own grid. I don't know if you knew that, but you've got the eastern grid, you've got the western grid, and you've got ERCOT, which a lot of people call it the Republic of Texas grid because it's wholly located within the state of Texas, and that's why we're regulated by the Public Utility Commission of Texas, and they kind of regulate the ERCOT grid. ERCOT stands for Energy Reliability Council of Texas. And so you've got the ERCOT grid, and yes, there are ties to the other grids, but when you have a system like that coming in, there might not be power coming in from the other grids. They might be having their own issues. And so in this storm, it was a perfect storm because it was affecting the grids outside of Texas as well as Texas. And so yes, there is the potential to bring in power from outside, but in this storm, it wasn't an option at this point. Yes.
I have two questions. One regarding the rolling blackouts. I'm just curious because I never lost power, but I know folks who lost it for days and days and days. So how is that determined? Because I didn't feel like I lived anywhere close to anything special that would have kept me from losing power. And then my second question that I'll let you go into is, I know about 10 or 11 years ago, there was a storm of the century that did the exact same thing. And all of these agencies, all of these providers were told, this is what you need to do to prepare for the next one, and they didn't do it. So how is that going to change this go around?
So I can answer part of that on ours. We prepared.
Right.
We did prepare.
Right.
And to kind of go, before I answer that one, to go back to your question, without generation, there's really no power to put out on the grid. And so as the generation went down, we had to cut power to stay below the supply. And as you cut power, you have a situation, like you say, you have a lot of circuits that are gone off, people lose power. We wanted to roll, our whole plan is to roll outages. That's, when we start, the whole plan is to roll it 15 to 45 minutes, have them off, turn them back on for hours, a few hours, then cut back off, and then turn back on, and then roll it. That's the whole plan. In 2011, that's what we did, and we did that for about 7.5 hours. And so that's the worst case scenario that we've had. This was, as far as time frame, 10 times worse. This is over 70 hours of rolling type issues. We shed about 4,000 megawatts in that storm. In this storm, we had to shed 20,000 megawatts. 20,000 megawatts. That was about, and our share of that load that had to be shed is 36%. 36.1% to be exact. So at our peak, we had to shed about 7,200, a little over 7,200 megawatts of load, which is a large amount. That's over 1.3 million customers. Because our service territory goes from Lufkin to Midland, Odessa, and from Sherman down to Austin, northern Austin. So we've got we are the largest utility provider in the state of Texas. We have the most load in the state, so our share of those megawatts is a lot higher. And so the goal is always to roll. It was happening so fast that we get the note from ERCOT to shed 1,000 megawatts, and then you get, before you can roll them back on, you get another note that says shed 1,500 megawatts or shed, and it went from 1,000 megawatts to 9,000 megawatts real fast. And so as you're trying to stay below that, it stops becoming a rolling and then it becomes controlled. And so that's what happened.
So it was, there were so many rumors and finger pointing. It wasn't because the windmills out in West Texas all froze up.
It was all generation.
Okay.
So all generation was going, Texas is built, you build on worst case scenarios and stuff like that. This was beyond worst case scenario.
So, how close were we to having just a catastrophic event where we're gonna have meltdowns to the point where no customers in the state were gonna have power for weeks and possibly months?
So I've got two answers for that. One's what the ERCOT said, and one is what our CEO said in the hearings shortly after. Oh, sorry. Here, I'll put that now. So the ERCOT had said that we were about 4 minutes and 30 seconds away from a catastrophic blackout. As far as our CEO is concerned, when he was testifying, he said, which I listen very closely when he talks, because he's a very, very good man, and I respect him a whole lot. But the frequency on the grid that I was talking about needs to stay around 60. When it gets, as it starts going down, then you have issues. So we've got 3 buckets of feeders. One of those buckets is called an under frequency feeder. So as the frequency goes down, we have 25% of our load that has to stay on those feeders, and they have to stay on. They've got these structures on them, and they're specialized for those feeders, that if it hits 59.3, the frequency on the grid, then those open, and that's kind of your last ditch effort at protecting the grid from blackout. And so we were at 59.302 at 2:02 a.m. on February 15th. Another 0.002 frequency drop, and those open, and most of the state goes out. If those don't work, then we go into total blackout, and total blackout could last, anywhere from 7 days to months. So it was close. Yes, sir.
I have 2 questions. We talk about supply versus demand. If we have a limited amount of supply, is it will come enough generators to create what our demand is? And thinking about it on those lines, if Texas grows like this in 5 years, we're still going to have the same capacity we have now with a whole lot more demand.
So the question was supply and demand, and do we have enough supply for the growth of Texas? Is that what you're asking? The answer is yes. There's a lot of generation out there, and there's plenty of generation out there for the state of Texas currently. Now, as it grows and grows and grows, you would add, but at the current moment, there's plenty. The problem is when you're planning for an event or a normal day, you can go out to ERCOT's website, and it shows you that supply and demand graph. And I watched it that week like a hawk, because I was watching for that generation to go back up, and as it started going back up, I can tell we can start adding load back to the system. And so, but that graph is on there, and it is, we have the supply, it's there. The problem is the power plants were getting affected, they were affected by the storm, and so they were dropping offline. And so as you lose a power plant, that you might lose 500 megawatts, or you might use 2,000 megawatts in an instant. And so it just drops off the table. And as a TDSP, that's what ERCOT's job is to watch for that. And as it happens, then they contact us and say, you need to shed load, and we have to shed whatever they say we need to shed. And so as that generation was fine. We had over 70,000 megawatts of generation going into the storm, and the use, I guess our demand was never over. It was right around 69,000 at its peak. But we had plenty of generation going into it. It was as the generation started failing and going offline is when we started having the problem. So it's there, but it's just, it has to stay online in order to not have those issues.
So it's like we're got rotating managers, board members. What has the state decided at large after those investigations to do? Are they planning for another one of these, or what are the next steps to make sure that we will have ones?
So now this is worst case scenario
Yep.
that you see. So you start planning for what happened now. This was beyond the worst case scenario. The state legislature, ERCOT, the PUC, they will all start looking at what happened and making sure we do what needs to happen to hopefully never let that happen. So yes, the state legislature, the ERCOT, the PUC, they'll all look into it. We'll be involved. We've got certain things internally with the company that we're looking at as well. So, yes.
I was gonna say, so, like energy terms, I assume we use more power in the summertime when there's 100 million air conditioners going than there are during the hot stupid storms. I mean, how does the usage come there? I guess the thermodynamic preparing for it, the weather's good, we generate it. During this storm, some of the power plants failed, we couldn't generate it, therefore it didn't happen.
So yes and no is the answer there. So in the summer, there is a lot of power being used, but in Texas, you buy air conditioners that are energy efficient, and they run at a low energy usage. In the winter, we don't have a whole lot of cold spells here in Texas. We really don't. And in the last few years, we've had a few more, but your heaters, especially your electric heat, is not energy efficient at all. We use a lot of natural gas heat. We use a lot of that. So when you get into a situation like this, and what I've seen is our biggest usage and biggest problem areas are in the winter because you have heavy load in the system, and that people don't understand. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but your power bill, especially if you have electric heat. Now you might have gas heat, which your electric bill is going to be about the same usage year round. But with people that have, like I have electric heat at my house because there's no gas lines. I live out in the country, and I chose electric heat over propane. But my bills in the winter are higher than they are in the summer because my air conditioners are very efficient. My heating is not as efficient. It uses heat pumps and then emergency heat, which is what you get below a certain temperature, around 18 to 20 degrees. It goes into emergency or auxiliary heat, and then it uses these heat strips, which are very inefficient, and all they do is heat up and they blow air over those heat strips, and that's how they heat your house. So a lot of times you're going to have a lot higher usage in the winter when it's really cold versus the summer when it's really hot. And then in the winter, you tend to have more issues with the power plants and stuff like that, because if it gets cold like it does, then in order to generate power, you've got to boil water. And so if the water freezes in the pipes, then you have a major issue. Yes, sir.
We were one of the lucky ones that never lost power. So the question is there a prioritization in the grid such that they can leave the power on, let's say, by the hospital district over here? Somebody theorized that we're close to the hospitals and that's why we didn't lose power. I have no clue. But, and then the other question was, how can the city of Tyler's pumping station, one of the stories I heard was we lost power to the pumping station on Palestine, and how can we lose that? Is there a backup or anything there? So anyway, can the grid be prioritized?
So yeah, the answer is yes. What's the priorities when something like this happens? So what you have is your load shed. You've got 3 buckets of feeders that you look at. One bucket is critical load. Critical load is hospitals, It is 911 centers. It is gas generation plants, and we do look at water utilities in that. So that's one bucket. The next bucket is that under frequency bucket that it can't be touched because that's 25% of your load you have to have on, and that's your last ditch to protect the grid. And then you have your load shed feeders. And so 51%, around 51% or so are on that load shed feeder list. And so what you have is you shed the load over here on these, and you do not shed the hospitals if you don't have to. Can they get shed? Can the under frequency loads get shed? If it gets bad enough, yes. You do what you have to protect the grid because of the situation where if you do lose the grid, it's a much more catastrophic issue than what you had. By the way, it's good to see you now on the Zoom call. So, but that, yes, we do prioritize them. Hospitals, you got to put the hospitals on. Now, a lot of hospitals do have multiple feeds going into hospitals. A majority of the major hospitals, Christus, UT Health, those have multiple feeds that go in. So you have the ability to work with those multiple feeds going in. But yes, if you're on a hospital feed, more than likely you do not lose power.
What happened with the power pumping station down on Lake Austin out here?
So that's something that we're looking into, and that's about all I can say on that one. Is I don't know exactly how that went on the list, but that's something we're looking into. We're trying to make sure that situations, and that happened in more than Tyler. It happened in other places. Now, most of those pumping stations have generators that have backup power to them. We had some water stations that the generators didn't work. I'm not sure about that one. Charles, my boss, was dealing with that situation throughout the week, and so. But I know some of my water plants in the towns that I represent, they had backup generation that they were trying to get on and turned on. Issue with the cold weather like that is if it's a diesel generator, that diesel will gel up on you. I don't know if you have a diesel truck and you couldn't start it, it's probably because the diesel turned to gel. And so that could be an issue in some cases. So, yes, sir.
Where is the nearest power plant for Tyler?
So okay, that's an interesting question. So he asked, where's the nearest power plant for Tyler? So some of the nearest power plants to here, you got Stryker, which is a gas generation plant. You've got the coal fire plants over at Martin Lake. You've got some gas generation up here in Forney and Terrell. You've got some peaking plants, and I can explain that here in a second, that are around. You've got some solar out here in East Texas, which is interesting, but there's enough land where they cleared it off to put a solar plant in. But the way the grid works is you put electricity onto the grid, and then people buy. I guess it's kind of like a bank. You put money into, everybody puts money into the bank, right? You put money in the bank. Do you know that the exact dollar bill that you put into the bank is the exact dollar bill you're pulling out? No, you don't. You don't know if the electron that you're buying is the exact electron from this power plant over here. Once it goes into the grid, it's all together and it's coming off.
Okay, got it. But that big station that I was talking about down on Grundy.
That's not a power plant.
What is that?
that's a switching station. And so what that does is, okay, so along Grundy, you've got two sets, well, actually you've got 3 sets of power lines along Grundy. You've got the big lattice towers that look like the Alpha Tower. Those are what's called 345 kV lines. That's a transmission line. It transports 345,000 volts of electricity through those wires. That is a lot of electricity. That's the biggest lines that we have that transport electricity.
They go in both directions.
And they're going both directions. And that is what your main grid components are. It's that one and then the one next to it that's the more poles, and it's kind of one pole and they're along one side of the pole, those are 138 kV, so 138,000 kilovolt or volts of electricity going through those. That's a step down from the 345. So when I say a switching station, it's got 345 coming in, and it's stepping it down to 138 to go out to somewhere else. And the 138 goes into a substation, which then steps it down to about 14,400 volts.
So what's a big transformer?
That's what a transformer is. Energy comes in, it goes around through this copper, all this copper, it goes through there, and it steps down that electricity to a more usable, friendly way. And so the transformers are housed, as you might see up on the pole, the little cylinders up on the poles, those step it from 14,000 volts down to 122.40 or 122.08 or whatever your house is using, and it goes to that copper. Now here's the interesting thing about electricity. If it can come in at a lower voltage and go through that transformer backwards, and it steps it up to the higher voltage. So if you're using a generator, and a lot of people were during the storm, they plug it into their house, and then all of a sudden it goes back through the their service, through their meter and service, and it goes back through that transmission line, or that transformer, and it gets back up onto the distribution line, and it's 14,000 volts. We think it's turned off, but it's high. And so that's very dangerous for our guys. So one of the first things during the storm, if you've had a big power outage, our guys will drive through the neighborhood listening for generators. And they do. They will absolutely listen for generators running. And if they hear them, it's just that extra form of precaution. And so it gets very, very dangerous for our guys if it's not hooked up right.
I think we have one more question.
We've heard about problems with wind power and solar power. How big an issue was that in this site?
Yeah, that's as far as we're concerned. That's a tough one to answer because as far as we're concerned, the electrons just weren't on the grid. Now, the politicians and everybody will argue one way or the other on that, whether it was good or bad, but the electrons just weren't there. Our packages to deliver to your house just weren't there for us to deliver to your house. And so when you don't have enough packages to deliver, then you can only have a certain number of people on. And that's where our issue was the electrons just weren't there. I know that's not what you want to hear for that answer, but that's a very tough one to answer. In parts of the state, we're big producers, down on the coast and everything. In parts of the state, we weren't producers.
One quick last one. One more.
So what you're saying is it wise for us to have personal generators or not?
Absolutely. I think as long as you have an electrician or you're trained on how to hook it up, absolutely. My father has a generator in his house, and it turns on when the power goes off at his place. And so I think everybody, if that is a fear for you, is losing power, then you should have a generator. And you can get a hooked up. Whole home generation is going crazy in Texas right now. Now, if you want one, there's a waiting list right now because after what happened, a lot of people were ordering whole home generation. And so, but if it's hooked up correctly, if it's done, everything's done correctly, it is a great thing to have. If it's not, we worry about the people that don't hook it up correctly. So we do listen for generators because of that hookup issue. It's just an added form of caution on our part.
Is it a requirement for report to you we have one?
No, not that I know of. If you've got solar panels that you're wanting to put electricity back in the grid, yes, you have to tell us about that because there's a special meter for that. Distributed generation is what that's called. But if you want to put electricity back on the grid, yes. If it's behind your meter, then you know, as far as I know, you don't have to tell us.
Well, thank you so much. I have one more quick question for you, Tom. I have one more quick question for you. A lot of folks were hit with outrageous power bills. Is Encore doing anything to assist folks with that?
So, so there are a lot of outrageous power bills out there. Our part of the bill is the same whether you got hit with an outrageous bill or not. Our part is not changed. If your power is not on, you should not be charged. Our part of the bill for that time that it was off. And so that is, as far as if that's your question, then if you have an outrageous bill and Encore charged you during that time, please contact us and let us know. We'll make sure that that gets taken off the bill. Our part of the charge will get taken off the bill. There's a lot of, like, I guess you're talking about gritty, where it went to $15,000 for the time to draw. That's not us.
I was just curious. I work at PAP, and one of the things that we do is we do help folks with utility assistance. And whenever you're paying your power bill, if you have the ability, you can usually make a donation as well to help folks out.
We have donated to PAP.
Okay.
Yes. Also has donated to PAP that's up to you.
Yeah. Just because there were a lot of folks out there who received really out, and not saying Encore did, but just really outrageous bills. I thought I'd throw that out there as we're a group that likes to help folks. So if you have the ability when you pay your next power bill to make a donation to one of those organizations to help folks in need, that would be great. I want to thank Bonnie again for coming out today and welcome you to our meeting, and hope that you come back and visit us again. And if you have interest in joining, that's certain recording and tell you more about it. Any last announcements? Did we get, Dalton, did you get the sign-up sheet back? Did everybody sign up? All right. Lee.
Everybody get a chance to sign up this weekend? Good job. I'd just like to thank Tom. He was one of the president-elects, like Beth, that spent 6 days on Zoom during the president-elect training seminar, and he came in, took all the slings and arrows from everybody. But if you get a chance to go down to Jacksonville, go to Saturday's restaurant, get a big pie down there. That's where they meet with the Rotary Club, and it'll be a fantastic thing down. I know you're going to be a fantastic president for Rotary. So thank you, sir, for coming and sharing with us today.
If there's no additional announcements from the floor, let's see, who can I put on the spot? Who wants to do this in the four-way test? I want to do over. Ann wants to do it. Okay.
The four-way test. First.
Is it true?
Second.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will it build goodwill and America?
Fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all?